truly is. Brown drives, layup on the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice the body.
Scoring net, knocked away.
Welcome in to another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. I'll tell you who's not doing well. That is the Summer League Celtics, buried in a hopeless 0-2 hole. Wick, sell the team, buddy. Joining us back fresh from a trip down to Melbourne, where he has proudly missed the majority of Summer League. It's Jackson Bauer. Jackson, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
Yeah, great. I'm so happy you've caveated that, because otherwise I was going to have to pretend I knew what I was talking about for these guys. But now the cat's out of the bag. I'm well, recovering from a bender. Yeah, it was fun while it lasted, and it's good to be back. I don't think I've been on here since we flamed out in Game 7, so maybe the vibes are better now. I don't know.
We're slowly regathering the vibes and recovering the vibes. And also with us from across the Tasman there, our New Zealand correspondent, it's Joe. Joe, what's going on, man?
Well, I had no intention of pretending like I'd watched any of the Summer League. So, so Jackson, you were in safe hands the entire time, man.
Beautiful.
No reason to fear.
Non-experts together.
Yeah. Well, this is strictly for casuals, man. Strictly for the casuals.
Good old vibes cast.
I got some takes. I got some takes that we'll get to.
Ben, man.
But
I feel like we need to play host, maybe, Ben, for you, our guest. This is like,
let's not get carried away. Let's not get carried away. The takes are limited and simple, as they often are with me. But first, before we get to Summer League, quickly, the latest on the Jaylen Brown contract or lack thereof situation. So a couple of news tidbits here, guys, and then I want your takes. So according to Adam Himmelsbach of the Boston Globe, Brown and the Celtics continue to work on a new deal, which could be worth as much as $295 million over 5 years. A league source tells Himmelsbach that there is confidence and hope that an agreement will be reached soon, but it's unclear how far they are from the finish line, with one source saying there is work to be done. And it goes on to say it's possible that the discussion is centered on performance incentives, but one former NBA general manager said that the inclusion of a fifth-year player option or 15% trade kicker is more likely the sticking point. And Jason Tatum, for what it's worth, received a player option for the 2024-2025 season when he signed his rookie max extension back in 2020. Jackson, like, what's the holdup? I guess, like, if we could just speculate, no one knows anything, so like we can float anything out there. What do you think the holdup is?
All right, is Jaylen Brown confirmed to be in America? Because the last I saw, he was in Paris wearing just like a leather vest and one glove and hanging out with like Jude Bellingham and Marcus Rashford and whatnot. So is he back in the States now?
Definitely in Vegas.
All right, okay. So I have no idea. The answer seemed to be for a minute that it was the Damian Lillard domino piece waiting to fall, which would trigger X trade, which would trigger Y trade, which would trigger blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. I have this sick feeling that maybe they're considering still trying to offer a trade package for Lillard because, I don't want to contemplate that. That just feels a bit dark to me. However, I don't know, man. Maybe these things just do take time. Maybe it's not a sexy conspiracy theory sort of answer. Maybe it's just, I have an issue with this clause. Cool, we'll get back to it. I'll review it later, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it's just a really boring accountant sort of process that's happening here. That's what I choose to believe. Or I don't know, maybe the Marcus Smart trade just broke his heart into a million pieces like it did mine, like it did Joe's. And maybe he's like, you know what? The loves just ain't there anymore. And I got to bounce. I don't know, man. It doesn't really concern me, I suppose. No. I don't know if anyone else is getting concerned vibes, but no, man, I think it'll get done. I don't think Jaylen Brown is turning down $290 million, whether or not we offer it to him or not. That would be a surprise. But I mean, yeah, it just feels like this is going to get done eventually, and the explanation is probably not as interesting as it might seem to us. I don't know. What do we think?
Yeah, I mean that's Occam's Rozier. Sorry, go ahead, Joe. I had to get that in there.
No, Ben, you finished that point, mate. You finished that point.
Well,
can you remind me what Occam's Razor is? Occam's Razor.
Well, I'm gonna flub it a little bit, but basically the simplest explanation is the most likely one.
Oh, yeah. Lab leak.
Okay?
Ow. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Occam's Rozier. That seems like the fifth-year player option would be the most likely thing to haggle over for me. for what it's worth, he's getting paid too much, man. I don't want to give him a fifth-year player option. Like, don't let that hang over our heads. No way.
Yeah, but so many players who have signed these max extensions have them. Like, there's a long list of players who are in a similar position to Jaylen Brown, like not the best player in the league. In some cases, not necessarily the best player on their team. Karl Anthony Towns being a recent one, where it's just because of their market value, because of where the cap is at, because of what they're eligible for in terms of a max extension at that time. Like, in order to keep them, those teams have had to sign those teams to those contracts and added those incentives like trade kickers and like a fifth-year player option as well. It's kind of standard. And the amount of money, like, yes, it seems like an exorbitant amount now, but just because of where it is, baby.
Yes, $300 million over 6 years seems a lot now, but wait. It won't seem like much at all in 2 years' time.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. You wait for the cap to inflate somewhat. And, when we re-sign Jason Tatum in a couple of years at what he's eligible for in terms of a max extension, that's going to be way more than what Jaylen Brown is eligible for now. So it's just relative and appropriate as far as like where the cap is at and what he's eligible for.
They're just different classes of player, though. And yeah, sure, whatever. I guess you've got to give Jaylen the max. Although, then do you really? Like, I feel this is a little bit of an untested thing in the NBA where like teams actually negotiate with players of Jaylen Brown's caliber, like that, like high level player that isn't actually a number one, that isn't actually a reality bending player. It's a little untested. We just kind of expect them to, like, they just capitulate. And we'll capitulate too.
So that's the holdup, right? They're clearly negotiating on the finer points. Like, if it was just his maximum everything, all the bells and whistles, all the stuffing, then it would just be done and dusted right now. But clearly there's a bit of a to and fro on the trimmings. Thank you. Thank you for helping me there.
I started thinking about turkeys. You're talking about stuffing.
Yeah,
well, I love a good rotisserie chook, buns, coleslaw, sage and onion stuffing. Ooh.
Yeah, so I mean, you feel free to continue that analogy, but like, what else are we trying to work with? What are the holding points in terms of the negotiation with Jaylen Brown?
That would make the most sense, but I don't know, man. Like, I'm just okay. Look, I just think we need to get out of our feelings on this Jaylen Brown thing. Like, he's going to be it's going to be marginal whether that is a positive value contributor over and above his salary. Like, and at the end of his contract, like, it's just hard with this, like, $50 million a year. It's just really, really, really hard. And or whatever X percentage of the cap is, what are we, 35% of the cap? All right, for him. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just hard for the guys to overproduce 35% of the cap. Some guys can. LeBron's done it for his entire career, but it's just always a marginal proposition, man. So I'm inclined to play hardball on the coleslaw and the sage and onion stuffing. He's getting his chicken, he's getting his buns, but I want that blooming stuffing.
He brought it back. I love it. But yeah, it's not like we can bring in 3 players that make up 35% of the cap and expect like a playoff punch from that group of players. You know what I mean? Like, we at some point we kind of need to be like aiming for players that are eligible for that much cap money because they are so talented. And add in the fact that Jaylen Brown is 26. Like, I refuse to believe that he just is who he is. Like, he might be 3/4 of the way there, but like, he is completely capable of tidying up his game and refining and optimizing his game still. Man, I'm so close to being like, Jordan didn't win. Jordan didn't win till he was 27. That's what's in my head. I'm not going to go fully there, but
if the last quarter of his development is a left-handed dribble, then yeah, sweet. I'm with you.
I mean, that would go a long way.
He's
totally.
Look, I accept we're going to have to pay him a lot, like this amount of money, but like, guys, let's not get it twisted. He's not a top tier NBA player. There is definitely a tier above him, and there's some big holes in his game, and some of them can be tied up, and some of them, man, he's just not intuitive. He's just not an intuitive basketball player. And that's why he does dumb shit out there all the time, you know? And that's, look, he's still really, really, really good, you know? But man, like, let's not just panic. You know, we can't negotiate on this, man. Play hardball, man.
Well,
like,
I think that's what they're doing. That's why nothing's been arranged yet. You know, they're probably saying, "Hey, man, I'd love to give you this $295 million, but here's a highlight of Game 7, and here's you turning the ball over, and here's you, doing X, Y, Z." And I'm sure it's not going to be like that confrontational. Here's the PowerPoint presentation I drew up as to why you don't deserve this money.
Here's your lowlights. You want to come sign with us?
Yeah. It's like, what is like $279 million that bad? Is that even like, a factor when we're talking about $300 million or $30 million less? I don't know, man. But like, I get the feeling that like Brad and whoever's in charge of these decisions and whoever's writing this up is probably factoring that in. They want to keep him, and they probably are under the impression, I think maybe a lot of us are in the back of our minds thinking that, I think I saw, was it Heisenberg in the chat say, are we sure he's even going to be here in 5 years? Is it more about just, making that, setting the price on the asset to look to trade it further down the line to get back X, Y, Z? I am not sure. But something tells me that they're not jumping down. They're not chomping at the bit to give him $300 million.
Yeah. And this is a common conversation going on everywhere between all Celtics fans. So that, that obviously makes it more difficult. That it's clearly like it's not like clear cut. It's not just like this guy absolutely deserves that money. That's probably part of the reason for the hold up.
Sometimes it's a bit iffy. There's a castle.
No, fair play. Summer League. Before I just get into my Summer League stuff, because I have watched the games, do you guys have any thoughts on Jordan Walsh or Justin Bean or Jay Scrub or
No.
JD
See, Ben, this is where we flick into your, like, me and Jackson have a podcast, and you're our guest, and you're here to tell us about Jordan Walsh. So
here with the Vegas report, it's Ben.
Yeah, here with Ben, our US correspondent, our Vanuatu correspondent, Ben Vellis.
I asked the questions here. Look, so Jordan Walsh. Ask away. What do you got?
Ben, who's your favorite player on the Summer League team?
Might be Jay Scrub, but Jordan Walsh is the player that
We've got a guy called
signed.
Jay Scrub on our team.
A name like that, he's good.
Yeah, he's one of the Jays. And he's not a scrub.
Joking.
He's like our best offensive.
That's what Joe calls Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
A scrub is a guy who thinks he's fine.
He is fine. Believe me.
That went nowhere. That reference. The
DLC, right? I get you.
Yeah, thank you. So Jay Scrub's your favorite guy. Is this just for vibes reasons, or is it
shits and giggles?
Really good? Yeah.
Jordan Walsh is my favorite guy from a longevity standpoint, and the reason for that is he, first of all, and you guys will love this, and we're going to get to some Grant Williams stuff later. He brings some of that dog mentality that we have shipped out with the departure of Marcus Smart and Grant Williams, and that's really clear, and not just from going back and watching his college highlights, but just from like the moment the ball tipped in Game 1. Like he seems like an injury risk from the opponent. That's the level of intensity that he's bringing in his game, and then he's got some really sustainable skills. So if we look at guys who we've loved in summer leagues past, like Carson Edwards, like JD Davison, who we'll get to, they have these skills that can maybe simmer up in summer league, like just you get hot for a couple of games, and Danny Ainge gives you a 4-year contract, Carson Edwards, even though you're like 4 foot tall, and then it never eventuates into anything in the NBA. Jordan Walsh, 1 year
for each quad.
That's right. Well done. The math checks out. So Jordan Walsh, he clearly, first of all, the directive is to like take those threes, and he had a quote after the game that they're basically forcing him to take those threes. He hit a bunch of them in his first game. He is driving closeouts, and he's defending really well, and those are scalable skills, and the defensive foundation gives him some time, I think, to develop the shooting and the other skills as far as like his playability from NBA roster perspective. And so he's really shown himself to be the sort of player archetype that can be complementary towards the Jays and the rest of the Celtics roster as is, and his defense, I think, might keep him on the court from day one. That said, like he's extremely raw, and if you watch the Summer League, games in full and not just the highlights, there's like little obvious things that he kind of sucks at. Like he loses his man on box outs regularly. He dies on screens like quite regularly as well. Despite everything I've just said about, singing his defensive praises, there's just some like schematic things that he just needs to work on.
Well,
but
so what's the good stuff on defense? Just flesh that out.
Like moving his
Dogness.
feet, denying the dominant hand of the ball handler, like keeping one hand down on the dribble and one hand up over the dominant
Coach
shooting
Ben,
hand.
all right. Nice.
And just moving his feet and staying in front of his guy, like diving to the floor, first to the floor. We can keep our name of our podcast because we've got this guy on the team. And just the tenacity, like that, and that's not like an undervalued thing, right? It's what we've loved about this
It's a
team.
skill.
Yeah, exactly. And he brings all of that. So I think that's the sort of stuff that's going to keep him around while he sort of becomes a more polished player.
On the shooting, this is some players shoot a light ball and some players shoot a heavy ball. So, Jaylen Brown can shoot a real heavy ball sometimes. What's his technique like, man? Like, is it like
it has looked heavy at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like he had a really hot start to his first game, and my take from that is like his confidence is high, and you need to be a confident player to succeed in the NBA despite your faults. And we've seen like skilled players fail due to a lack of confidence, and I don't think that's an issue for Jordan Walsh. That said, like he doesn't have a very repeatable shooting form, and at its worst, it can look quite heavy. To answer your question.
So we got a bit of slinging happening. What's the
at times, yeah.
Not
Not a tight shot pocket at times. There's a bit of a sling happening.
Not like Hauser. Like, because see, to me, Hauser has like one of the most perfect shots I've ever seen. Like,
off the laces as well.
Yeah, just catch, just no wasted motion. All tight. Yeah. So he's not Hauser.
Okay. No, but that's okay.
Then on the other hand, Smart, man, it's got to blow away because Smart's technique, I did not love his shooting technique either. Smart was very, very fling it from kind of middle and overhead. It wasn't lined up that good. Is he kind of on the Smart end of the spectrum, we think?
Yeah, a little bit.
More Smart than Hauser for sure. in a lot of aspects,
Yeah. But yeah, similar to Smart, there's enough that he does very well, aside from shooting, to keep him around while he develops that skill. And that's probably one of the more developable, for lack of a better term, skills for, NBA pros who come in and have shown like quite early they can hold their own on an NBA court. And that's not to say like I think Walshy will do quite a bit of G League time this year. He's got enough going on where he can hold his own elsewhere that he can come in and get a few shots up, and he will get open shots if he plays with the Jays and experiment a little bit. But he's not going to be like a lights out shooter, and that's not what we drafted him for. But he's got plenty of talent, plenty of tenacity, and brings plenty of that back to the squad where we shipped all of that out with Marcus Smart and Grant Williams. So I'm pretty high on Jordan Walsh relative to his draft position, I suppose. I mentioned Jay Scrubb. I'm indifferent about the rest of the guys on the roster, just to hammer this home. So Justin Bean, Justin Champagny, Oleg Bolsarowski, who's this like heavily tatted Polish dude who had
Bolsarowski and Scrub.
Yeah. These are like Chat GPT made up names. But, and then JD Davison, who finished with 10 turnovers in the last game. Also happens to be leading, I believe, last I checked, the current Summer League in assists, and might also be third all time in Summer League assists per game. But some of these turnovers, man, were so bad. And you could maybe, if you're the biggest JD Davison apologist, make the argument that if he's not sharing the court with like 4 NBA caliber players, then like who is he making attempted passes to? And is that to his detriment? And maybe to some degree, that's a valid argument. But these were just so bad. It was just like, first of all, he's completely reluctant to like pull up and shoot. He has good penetration. He gets into the paint. And then he just gets lost. And he gets into these pockets particularly against zone defenses. Those pockets exist where just the pull-up option, the floater option, it's there for everyone. And if you're playing at that level, the expectation is you should have the capacity to execute. If that is opportunities given to you, you should be able to finish. He doesn't even look for it. And then he just gets way too deep into the paint. He tries to give up the ball to someone who kind of doesn't know what they're doing, like, I don't know, Justin Champagnie, for example, and it just results in a turnover. And I know he was drafted 50-something a year ago, but they brought him back. They've just signed him to a 2-way deal. So, there is some expectation, okay, we're taking another look at this guy. The expectation of him in the Summer League is higher than the rest of the roster. And I just don't think that he's necessarily executing in the way that we would hope that he would at this point. So a little bit disappointed in JD Davison, but, he's a 2-way player, so it doesn't really matter, I guess.
Yeah, so the quality of the turnovers is the thing, eh? I know we've got a comment here from Heisenberg that the volume of the turnovers was scary, but you know how when you watch, sometimes there's a turnover and it's just the passer just saw something happening that the recipient did not see happening. Those are the kind of ones I kind of almost like those turnovers. It just means sometimes a genius is surrounded by idiots, right? They're not of that variety, is what you're saying. They're just
the vision's not there.
Right.
Yeah. What did he have in the first game against the Heat, though? It was 11 assists?
He did have 11 assists. Well, yeah, I mean, but
so it worked once.
Yeah. And you can't fault that, but just the terribleness of the turnovers in this second game, it was just so glaring. You're so not ready for any sort of NBA role, even, just skimming minutes off the bench, a la Peyton Pritchard or whoever. He just doesn't seem ready for that kind of role. So it's not to say that the potential is not there. He's got incredible burst, incredible athleticism, and a nose for passing. He's clearly trying to be a pass-first point guard, maybe just in lieu of any sort of shooting talent, but he's just so far from being that. But, it's a nod of confidence in JD Davison's direction that they've signed him to this second 2-way deal, which I think is $500K per. Plus he's living in cheap old, Portland, Maine, where I'm assuming $500K per year, gets you a pretty good place to live, pretty good living situation. So it could be a lot worse, but he's got a long way to go. I don't know, guys. Any other questions for me regarding Summer League? I obviously spent a lot of time and attention watching the games.
Detailed scouting report, man.
Now time for a nonsense question. Did you see the controversial stain on his pants that he is now in danger of being known forever for and nothing else?
Yeah, well, let me throw this question back at you guys. Is there any way that isn't shit? Because, tell me, what else could that be? I don't necessarily...
It's got that light green hue about it a little bit. Yeah, no.
It doesn't. I don't know.
I'm an expert on.
Paul Pierce bleeds green. Paul Pierce bleeds green. JD.
It's a perfect way to endear yourself to a fan base, whilst also.
Yeah,
I don't know. Man. Again, that's the depth. The depth of knowledge I have of the Summer League. My question back to you was in regards to feces. So
it's a good question.
What you will. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I don't know how to answer it. Joe, any thoughts?
I know in Summer League, don't they have the reversible uniforms?
So.
Yeah, so that would maybe explain it. If he was playing Commando and he was playing in the green and he had the whites on the inside and he was running Commando and just a bit of a skid, just not necessarily crapped himself, just didn't wipe properly, didn't use the B-Day maybe. And as a result, when he turned it inside out, maybe that he thought the shorts were all good. And
I mean, the Summer League facilities, they don't come with bidets. And I think, if every other NBA player was subject to no bidets in their routines, then maybe they'd be a lot more guilty wearing the whites, So
not the usual locker room luxuries there in the Thomas and Mack Center. I guess.
You got to earn that luxury bowl.
All right. Well, before we move on to some other stuff, namely Grant Williams, just quickly, a quick ad read here. The First of the Fall podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/Boston to join today. I was looking at FanDuel earlier, guys, and MLB, it's not a strong suit for me, but they do have NBA Summer League futures in there, and you can get the Cavs at +300 to win the Summer League and, bet responsibly, all of that stuff. But so many teams that have a better constructed roster and more talent are actually starting to rest their marquee players to preserve them for the actual NBA season. We're seeing it with Wemby and the Spurs, obviously. We're seeing it with Jabari Smith now with the Rockets. The Cavs, meanwhile, have Sam Merrill shooting 48% from 3 on 10 attempts per game, which is that's just insane efficiency. And then Amani Bates, who, was a, hugely touted high school prospect, didn't have a particularly good collegiate career and is now actually producing in Summer League. Hence, they are the top-rated team per FanDuel to win. And +300, not bad odds, I suppose, to get on that now, given all the absences that are coming up for the rest of Summer League. I would throw to you guys and ask you, but I happen to know that you've watched no Summer League, so perhaps we can just leave it there and move on.
I have something. Most memorable or hopeful Summer League signing, because I remember Lenny Cook played for the Celtics Summer League team. Do you guys remember who Lenny Cook was?
No.
Can't say I do.
Okay, so little history lesson. So back when LeBron was coming up, right, the best player in high school was this guy called Lenny Cook. And so LeBron's coming out party was at maybe the ABCD camp, and he dominated this guy called Lenny Cook. But Lenny Cook still had heaps of name recognition. Celtics signed him for Summer League, and we're all pretty jazzed about it. So I'm wondering if you have a favorite Summer League signing memory along those lines.
Jackson?
2 years ago, we lost to the Kings in the Summer League final, and I was convinced that the Summer League team was about as good as probably the worst team in the NBA that year, because it was smoking dudes. So I mean, he was already on the team, but I just thought Peyton Pritchard was just the second coming of Jesus during that Summer League. So
he's a good player.
That was the one shining Summer League memory that I have. And it's our man Peyton.
Can I say the Jays? Is that so Tatum? Well, so that year where we had Tatum
number
and
11
Brown
Tatum
on the
yeah
7-11
7-11
yeah. I mean, they killed it, and it was sort of rework your approach to the game, Jason Tatum, where they cut out the mid range of his game, and it was Jason Tatum shooting back down Kobe turnaround, spin, fadeaways, and hitting them, and then hitting a cutting Jaylen Brown for epic dunks over guys who were never going to make the NBA. To have that level of talent and athleticism in a Summer League roster was a lot of fun. I will say Carson Edwards, I was shitting on him earlier, but I was fully bought into the Carson Edwards experience. I actually tried to purchase a Carson Edwards Summer League jersey unsuccessfully.
Yeah.
I guess it's not profitable to try and replicate.
That's where the real fans
I was
are.
looking. I remember Grant Williams' one was for sale, and obviously they're the same class. Yeah, I was pretty keen. Sorry, Jackson, I just talked over you, man.
No, you're right. You're right. The point it was a similar sentiment.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's a good question. And we've all had a turn of answering it, but you mentioned Grant Williams, which is a great segue. And Jake and Spoonie on their last pod, they sort of covered the transactional aspects of the Grant Williams trade. So guys, the three of us have been doing this pod since 2018. So well and truly before Grant Williams' birth as a Celtic. Let's just talk more about Grant Williams' time in Boston, and if we're sorry to see him go. I think some people are happy to see him go. Joe, what are your thoughts? first of all, from a roster perspective, but also just from a fandom standpoint, what are your thoughts on Grant being shipped out?
Well, I mean, okay, first of all, like I'm a Grant fan, despite his flaws. He's my blind spot. I just love the guy. And I think I'm just going to repeat a point that I heard Bontemps make. Like we talk about like, oh man, don't worry about paying Jaylen Brown $300 million because the cap will go up. Think about what that's like as a percentage of the cap. The point that Tim Bontemps, sworn enemy of Celtics fans, made is like, well, like Grant Williams' contract is for like 7.5% of the cap right now or something like that. And it actually only increases by 4.5% every year. Yeah. So it actually gets cheaper relative to the salary cap. What are we doing here, guys? We need guys like Grant Williams on the team. Like, are we not trying to win this year? Do we not think we can win? Do we think, oh, no, Grant Williams won't help us win? Come on, guys. I just, no love for it, man. It's a pretty rough off season, to be honest. Like, my two favorite players, going. I'm not pumped.
It's a tough one. All I can assume is that like Joe Mazzulla had something to do with it because I mean I think it's overstated how many DMPs he had, but like he definitely had more than he ever had in his career. So I don't know, maybe there's just some master plan that that Mazzulla just doesn't see Grant a part of, and then you factor in or might be a misnomer, but the salary cap restrictions and everything like that. Maybe they just decided that he just wasn't a part of this team going forward. I mean. I loved him. I didn't want to see him go. I thought I would love to have seen him play alongside Porzingis. The vibes that he just brings alone to the team, I think, is something that we'll all be very sorry when he's there's gonna be footage of him dapping up Kyrie Irving, and it's gonna be like a dagger through everyone's collective heart. Be like, oh man, not only is he not here, but he's like he's playing with him now. So. Yeah, and you just know he's going to have like probably the career of his year, getting like sweet dimes from Luka all the time. So look, It's regrettable. I can understand the decision why it's been made, but yeah, it doesn't make it suck any less. One of my favorite episodes of this podcast that I wasn't a part of was Joe and Jake speaking to Grant Williams' dad. And it was the most, I was so proud. I went and told all my friends that like I wasn't on the podcast, but my podcast spoke to Grant Williams' dad, and they were just like, "Who? What? What are you talking about?"
It means something to us, man.
Yeah, it was great, and it sucks that I mean that's. I'm glad that it happened, but yeah, you just reminds me that Grant's no longer here, and it's bad.
I wonder if we could get him on to get a little inside perspective of how it went down. Probably not.
Maybe. I'm sure he was told after he came on this podcast, never go on that podcast again. But we can always reach out and try. Yeah. So I think Grant Williams is going to be, first of all, a sneaky good fantasy pickup in this upcoming season because he's just going to get so many open threes and he's going to play minutes in Dallas that he wasn't just getting for the Celtics, at least under Joe Mazzulla at all. And you mentioned this, Jackson, that how he fell out of favor with Joe Mazzulla must have been such a part of why the trade happened. And like, yes, you could argue we've just got to go all in, right? And I think there may be additional moves to come, but are you really willing to make such a foray into deep tax territory for a guy that you just know that your head coach is just not, or is very reluctant to play? I think that's a huge part of why Grant has been moved, and Grant is maybe a victim to like Mazzulla ball. And then, as I say that, like Mazzulla ball is like spacing and threes and that sort of stuff. And Grant really lends a lot of himself to that. So it's tough. I hope maybe that the silver lining is that we see a lot more Hauser and a lot more confidence in Hauser, because if we're talking Mazzulla ball, then that's really Hauser's strong suit, but it's tough. It's tough to make the argument for it, especially where we're not the ones writing the checks. Like, why not just keep him around? Who are you going to get in to replace his skill set? If you are trying to win a title, why would you not keep this guy around? The chemistry works. The skill set works. It's tough. So, and then we lose a lot of our personality. So let me ask you this. Who are the top 3 players, Jackson, that you are heartily cheering for on the Celtics now? Because I would have argued previously that probably Marcus Smart and Grant Williams would have made that top 3.
Yeah. Well, Smart was definitely in there. Grant, I don't know. I liked Grant. I don't think I could hand on heart say he was one of my favorite players. But I certainly liked him. My girlfriend, who I have force fed Celtics content for 2 years to the point where she was almost in tears when Smart got traded and was also very upset when Grant no longer re-signed with us. It sucks. But I mean, look, I obviously, quality. Shout out Aaron. To answer your question, the 3 players, I mean, I guess it's Tatum, I guess it's Brown, and I guess it's Horford because he probably doesn't have long left to go, perhaps.
Sure.
That would be my easy answers. I'm sure KP Porzingis has some weird idiosyncrasies that that's just going to remind me of Ivan Drago in some way that I'll probably resonate with and stuff. But yeah, for now it's just got to be those 3. But yeah, it doesn't feel as special as a guy like Smart or a guy like Grant.
Yeah, I mean, Derek White for me is my definite favorite player now.
Good call. Yeah,
definite favorite. I've always liked Pritchard. I'm probably, when I get to see a lot more of him during the year, I might might fall out of love with him. The limitations will start to make themselves known, right? But I do like Pritchard. And man, for the third one, I guess I'm not trying to be a bummer, but I'm lukewarmish on our stars, right? It's been but reasonably well documented in this portion of the internet. So I probably have to go Rob, man. Probably have to go Rob. I like his personality. I've come around on Rob. I was not a believer early on.
I remember.
Yeah,
it's hard to talk. It's hard to talk you back when the guy misses his he's playing for his first press conference, man. Yeah, that's quite an achievement to come back and get to the good graces and the good top. But yeah,
he's a battler.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, he's so likable though. Yeah,
he's very likable. Yeah,
I feel like the goal for the preseason from my fandom's perspective is to just really find personalities to buy into to try and replace that void. And Rob Williams is a top candidate. Derek White, definitely. Blake Griffin, if we bring him back, announce that already. Surely that's a domino to fall. Derek White. And I think clearly there's also this idea that the Jays and particularly Tatum need to step up. That's what the biggest Celtics optimists have sort of argued, that it's to clear the way for the Jays to step up from a leadership perspective. And I think Tatum, he has shown flashes, because anytime that he does show a burst of emotion, it's this surprising thing. Oh, look at him. He's fired up emotionally. And I feel like the surprise element of that has been dissipating as we've grown used to that part of his personality emerging. So maybe there's a step up for him to take there. I'm becoming a Celtics apologist myself, clearly. But I like that we're at least making room for that, because you kind of need your best player to also be your best leader. So at least the stage is set for that to happen. I'm getting away from the Grant stuff, though. So I want to get back to Grant, because we will miss him. I do have a clip to run. I want to ask you guys about your favorite Grant Williams moments. And it cannot be forgotten that Grant Williams went to a professional, legitimate NBA post-game interview and did this.
Batman, what did it take to get the win tonight?
Kept Boston safe.
Dude, in character as Batman, have you ever seen anything so crazy in an NBA setting? We've had, crazy stuff in locker rooms, guns in locker rooms, and all kinds of crazy stuff. No one's ever gone in character as a superhero to an interview. Tell me I'm wrong.
I would agree with my housemate. If the Celtics win a title, I'm going to get some sort of Celtic-centric tattoo. For about 2 days, I was contemplating getting Grant Williams as Batman, as that. Yeah, and it would have been the. I would have regretted it immediately, but I'm just it's that ridiculous, and it is that just out of anything I would have expected from this team. I have to commemorate it, but no, that takes the cake for me. At least my Celtics fandom, that's for sure.
I've This stuff has no place on a championship team. I don't know.
Probably. Probably.
It kind of makes me think like there's everyone's allowed their different interests and one of the interests I would not share with Grant is one of like comic books and that. but I kind of I think Grant can have a laugh at himself. It made me seem like he's a reasonable sort of guy. Shut up and doing that. He might have leaned into it a bit long. You got to drop the act a little long. That's the trick with any kind of humor, right? Like you can't play the joke out too much or it gets tiring. And I think that might be his flaw, right? He doesn't maybe know when to stop. That sort of seems like, he doesn't know when to stop complaining to the refs, and he might not know when the joke's not funny anymore. But I thought it was great.
I mean, I think now looking back, it's great. Maybe at the time it was great as well, but also it's like you said, Joe, like he didn't know when to stop, and he definitely, as much as I love him, like became a little bit tiresome in his behavior as the season went on, and the fact that unfortunately was like backed up by inconsistent play and a lot of frustrating moments on the court. Like that attempted and missed game winner against the Jazz, like the I'm gonna make them both situation. Both. Not a great year. So, c'est la vie. I will miss you though, Grant Williams, and please, Gil Williams, feel free to come back on this podcast anytime to talk shop. And any other favorite Grant Williams moments before we sort of tie the bow on that one for good.
Let's be real. We don't win the series against the Bucks last year without him. Not just Game 7, but because of the defense on Giannis. So, shit, that's got to be worth something. You know what I mean? That's like I feel like he's above Kelly Olynyk in the fondly remembered, Celtics role player oddball characters. But I feel like his contributions are a little bit more memorable, at least for me.
Playing on after getting curb stomped by Joel Embiid. That was pretty good. I think for me, I have a couple like snippets in my head of just particular things he could do on the court. I remember him against the Knicks. It's just like, man, it was like in his rookie year against the Knicks, going up verticality, two hands and getting a block. I also was a little bit of an underrated shot blocker. And definitely, poor guy couldn't rebound very well, but that
I remember Jokic last year. Sorry to jump in. I just remember that.
Wow, yeah. I mean, he wasn't too bad at it. He got a tough whistle. I always felt like he got a real tough whistle when he would shift his feet really well. Sort of War on Tice kind of part 2 with him. I often felt, and I understood his frustration, because I genuinely felt like he was getting hit in the chest a lot. And, if you hit in the chest, in my view, it should be a play on at worst. That's my memories of Grant. I just liked his game. I liked I would like playing basketball with Grant Williams, you know?
Maybe not hanging out at the pub afterwards, but playing
I could do that too, yeah.
Well, you mentioned the war on Tice. There's a question from Mr. Tice in the chat here. Who was more important, Big Baby Davis or Grant Williams?
Probably about equivalent. Probably about equivalent. I mean, Big Baby was part of a title team, and he had a big part on that 2010 run.
Yeah. If they won that year, I think this would be an easy answer.
But Big Baby didn't really have, he really wasn't as good a player as Grant. He didn't have a natural role. Like Big Baby couldn't really shoot it. He couldn't really rebound. Oh, he was probably a better rebounder, but he certainly couldn't switch out. He certainly wasn't playing perimeter.
He was a heated.
Grant was very useful.
Yeah. He had that baseline J though.
He did.
All right, we've got to move on. Otherwise, we're going to be here all night. But we will miss you, Grant Williams. So the mid-season tournament has been announced, and the Celtics are in a group, which I just now realized I failed to upload that data to our stream. So we'll pull that up in a second. But just to quickly rehash the format of the mid-season tournament, if you're not already aware of it. So there's a group play stage to begin with, 6 groups, 3 in each conference, 5 teams in a group. You play each team in the group once. These games actually count as regular season games. The group teams with the best tournament record are at the group stage, they all move on. Plus, the next 2 best teams become wild card teams, rather. Then there's an 8-team knockout round, single elimination, which should be really fun. Then the last 4 teams head to Vegas, and then there's a championship game on the 9th of December. The winner gets what they're calling the NBA Cup, and the final game is the only one that doesn't count as a regular season game, which is weird. Like, I'm not comfortable with the idea of, like, Tatum playing 42 minutes a night and also having to play like an 83rd game in the regular season. There's more. So for the 23-24 season, the in-season tournament prize pool will be allocated to the players on the teams that participate in the knockout rounds. So not that initial group stage, with allocations increasing depending on how far a team progresses in the tournament. The tournament payouts for players on standard contracts will be $500K apiece for those on the winning team, $200K apiece for those on the runner-up team, and $100K apiece for those on the teams that lose semifinal games, and $50K for those on teams that lose in the quarterfinals. At the conclusion of the in-season tournament, the NBA will name the MVP of the competition and the all-tournament team, and selection will be based on players' performance in both group play and the knockout rounds. So sorry, guys, a lot of talking from me there, but there's a lot of information to get to. Obviously, it's a new concept that the NBA is introducing. While I scramble to find what group the Celtics are in, Jackson, like, are you accepting of this new concept that the NBA is introducing?
If you had asked me this, I don't know, a week ago, probably before they announced like the finer details of it, it would have been an absolute hardcore no. I think it is. It's trying to be the FA Cup, trying to be what European football does with their mid-season tournaments, which is fantastic because their leagues are determined by, you play 38 games, and if you're the number 1 seed, or you've got the most points after 38 games, then you win the league. So these tournaments are put in, to complement, these leagues and provide a little bit of like knockout and whatnot. So I thought there's no point doing any of this. The fact that it's a cash prize, like, why would I give a shit that multimillionaires are competing for $500,000, like, which to them is probably chump change. So everything on paper to me screamed that this was just a waste of time, and this is the NBA just desperately trying to, just clutch at anything they could to make more money. But I gotta admit, I want us to win it.
Yeah, right.
Like, now that it's announced, and now that I see it, and now in my mind I have some sort of idea of how it's going to play out. And also, I think something that just kind of won me over, the fact that the pool games actually count as regular season games. I thought it was just going to be extra on top of it. I'm like, there is no chance they're not just going to wheel out the G League team. We'll get Omar Ballsack and Scrub Man, who's on the go wrong. But I don't know.
Can I change my name on this thing? I want to be Omar Ballsack, founder of creativity.
There's just a chance the basketball could be bonkers, and it could be super, super exciting. And I don't know, man. We were the first. I mean, we weren't the first, but we had the first ever Eastern Conference MVP in Tatum on our team. Why not be the first ever NBA, Cup champion with the first ever NBA Cup MVP team, or all NBA Cup team, or whatever. Whatever. I don't know why. As I'm saying this, I still think it sounds a bit ridiculous, but I gotta admit, I'm actually looking forward to it a little bit now.
Nah, I'm not into it.
Pass.
This is. Nah, okay. So here's my kind of thinking on it. It's like, if you're out for dinner, right, and the waiter comes over, right, whatever, and it's like, do you guys want anything else? Imagine if he came over to your table and was like, you want anything else? And you're like, no, I'm good. He's like, okay, but I'm just going to bring you some more fries. And he kept doing it. He kept bringing more fries. I don't need more. Like, I don't need more than the NBA championship. Right. So it feels like I'm being forced to eat these fries that keep piling up on my plate. And eventually it's like, nah, I don't want the fries. I sort of feel like it's just, what does it add? To me, it can only subtract from the value of an NBA championship. Like, who's the NBA champion in a year? Like, it's one of those things. It's like, it's one of the things that makes American sports different. is the absence of other trophies, and one of the things that I kind of like about it, and I don't think they need to ape what we have. We've got some cool things here. Like in New Zealand, we have this thing called the Ranfurly Shield, which was like, and when rugby was way bigger than it was now, the Ranfurly Shield was the biggest thing, and it was basically like the NBA championship belt. You know, they talk about that. Like it was basically that. Like you would defend your belt if you had a home game. Right. It's a cool thing, but it doesn't map on to me to American sport that well. And I kind of want my American sport American, to be honest.
But to
less
use your
fries, funnily enough.
That's the thing. There's only one extra game. It's just the championship game. The rest of it completely loops into existing scheduled regular season games. So it's not more fries. It's
not about the game, Ben. It's more titles. It's doubling the amount of fries because there's another championship in here. What does it mean? This is what it comes down to, right? I don't want what does it mean? If it means something, that's bad because that goes against, that reduces the value of the NBA championship, right? There's only so much meaning pie to go around here. And if it means nothing, then it's a waste of time. I sort of see it as almost like a can't win proposition. How's that?
Well, I'm here to tell you, it's not more fries. It's here's the fries you ordered, and here is a free extra spicy sauce that we're sprinkling all over your fries that you were getting anyway. And now they're spicier, they're tastier. You can gram them and get extra likes and followers. There's more substance to the fries because of what we're adding to those fries that you wanted anyway. It's not more to eat. It's just a better, tastier dish. That's the way I'm looking at it. Like, these games are going to be played anyway. Why not make them more interesting? Why not add some stakes to them? Why not, give some team that has no chance of winning an NBA title some sort of sense of hope, like the Sacramento Kings or the Timberwolves or whatever? Why not give them that chance?
Yeah, it's like the FA Cup, have the lower division teams come up and beat, the big dogs. But again, that works better because they're from the lower division. They're from, Droylsden beating, Chelsea or some shit.
Wrexham.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Wrexham will be doing that eventually. But Joe, obviously, I think you make good points because devaluing the NBA championship is something that I don't think is a good idea. But I don't know, man. If it's going ahead and it's happening and it's not extra games, then I mean, shit. If you just if it's basically like a pseudo game 7 that we get to enjoy come semifinals, come finals time, then I'm gonna be just as sweary and just as pacing around the living room and yelling at the TV as I am gonna be for any standard of game, maybe even more so. So look, I'll watch it, and if I enjoy it, I enjoy it. And if I don't like it, then I'll pretend that I never liked it anyway, and we can delete this episode. So it'll just be one of those. Just memory hole it.
Well, what if we're in the championship game against the Lakers or the Sixers or something like that? You're telling me that you won't care with all of your soul about that game?
I don't think it would, man. It's because are we saying the Summer League championships, the championship? It's the Summer League. Summer League kind of works because we understand it's a different sport, basically.
It'll be treated halfway between the bubble and the Summer League, the bubble championship and the Summer League championship.
I'm pretty sad that we haven't won a game in Summer League yet, but that's for another day. Sorry, go ahead.
I just don't think there's more significance available to dole out. So the only thing that it can do is dilute the significance of an actual NBA championship. So if we didn't win the NBA championship, but we won the NBA Cup or whatever, another problem is the name of it. They've kind of used up all the good names with those silly MVP trophies. They should have saved one.
The Red Allback Cup?
Yeah. You go to the Aussie
Carson Edwards. The Carson Edwards NBA Cup. The Carson Edwards Award for most chucked threes in an NBA Cup game could be one of the sub awards.
But do you know what I mean? It's if it means something, that means that it's a consolation against, say you're a really good team, I don't know, say you're a contender. you're a contending team for the normal NBA championship, but you win this NBA Cup. Then somehow your season is more meaningful because it had the NBA Cup win in it, right? But it like necessarily means that the NBA championship means less than what it did if something can console you for it not happening. And I just think it. Both. I think unless you win both, to me the NBA is, and I'm way more. I'm not like totally closed off to change. Like I'm pretty open to changing the schedule down, but I kind of understand why people say nah. The NBA is a sport and it has a particular structure to it. And as you play 82 games and you have a series of 7-game series that lead to one eventual winner, you're changing it's almost like you're playing a different sport when you go to single elimination. So that's kind of my argument. That's my argument, man.
Yeah, I fully realize and understand your argument.
But you're just going to enjoy the game anyway, right?
Well, where I was going to try and find common ground was like, I probably won't really know how I feel about it until it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we can like circle back on this after like an incredible, exciting game 1 of the NBA midseason tournament and see if we both loved it or hated it, and we can revisit it at that point.
You know what they will do as well? Special NBA Cup only jerseys as well. They might bring back that Gaelic Lord of the Rings one that Joe absolutely adored from 4 years ago.
I'll buy it. I'll buy everything. I'll buy anything with a Celtics name.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
I'm a fiend. All right. Well, look, let's wrap up on this because we're going long as usual. So a couple of rumors here in terms of NBA fringe free agents. So the first one, John Wall. He held a private workout in Las Vegas that the Celtics and several other teams reportedly attended. He spent last season with the LA Clippers. For what it's worth, through 34 games, he averaged 11.4 points, 5.2 assists in 22 minutes per game. And with that current guard rotation of Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, and Peyton Pritchard, and the recent addition of Delano Banton, you kind of wonder why the Celtics are looking at John Wall. Joe, I was just looking at both of your faces.
Probably because he's probably better than Delano Banton and sadly probably still better than Peyton Pritchard.
Right. So do you think it's a valid sort of tree to bark up?
Yeah. I mean, I personally think John Wall's probably a little underrated. That's it. Like, I'm a total casual for every other NBA team. I don't watch NBA really outside the Celtics at all. But when John Wall was good, man, he was really, really, really good. He was he wasn't just an athlete, He really could. He was a real point guard, man, and he could do some damage on the pick and roll. He could put a lot of pressure on a defense. So yeah, I'm open to that.
Yeah. I think, if we get him, would we need Blake Griffin as that veteran glue guy sort of presence to have around the locker room? I feel like they occupy the same tier of washed up, but not entirely washed up superstar. But then probably John Wall might just be better than Blake Griffin. More can contribute more is what I'm trying to say. I think it's worth a shot. And if he sucks, then you just don't pay him. Like, how much would we be giving him? Like, it would be peanuts compared to what he's collected over his career anyway. So
you might have to pay us.
Yeah, you might have to pay us. Fine. I'd pay to have a seat on the bench for sure. So,
yeah. John, have you paid your subs yet?
The highest
bidder. John, we've been asking you for weeks, man.
I'll just say that the Clippers, who had him last year, have no guard depth, and they are not looking to bring back John Wall. And I think that's very telling.
Yeah. I picked him up for my fantasy team last year, and yeah, he was a big fat zero. If
dog shit.
Anyway, so
yeah,
hey. That's my.
But he's a fun name, and maybe lends he just doesn't like. There's veterans who you think like, sage advice, like great voice in the locker room, and maybe I just don't know enough about John Wall, but he just doesn't lend himself to that sort of veteran archetype from what I can tell. But, I can't tell much. The other one, Glenn Robinson III. So Scott Agnes had this report that during an exclusive conversation with Fieldhouse Files, Glenn Robinson III shared that he plans to resume his NBA career and is preparing for workouts scheduled with NBA teams next week in Vegas. Teams like Milwaukee, Boston, and Golden State have expressed interest, he said. He last played 23 games with Sacramento in 2021. So he's been out of the league for a little while. And I did a little bit of digging around. And as far as I can tell, it's just because no one wanted him. It wasn't because he had like some sudden career pivot or anything like that. He just couldn't get himself on a roster. So Joe, Glenn Robinson III, like he was at some point like a talented, spicy wing. Is this something that you're excited to hear that the Celtics are exploring?
Mainly because I recognize his name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to give me some guys I've heard of before, you know?
It definitely helps. We've heard of him for a reason, right?
Yeah. Because his dad, his dad was Glenn Robinson.
Maybe. Still.
I've got to sign Glenn Robinson jersey, actually. Maybe if we sign him, he'll be keen to come on the podcast and I can, get him to complete the set.
Complete the dad set.
Absolutely. He won the slam dunk contest, didn't he? In that really bad year. Yeah, I think he did. I think he beat Aaron Gordon, to be honest. And I say I think, I'm like looking at it, so I'll stop pretending that I'm pulling this out of my mind. Yeah. So I mean, we had Blake Griffin, then we could have Glenn Robinson, another slam dunk champion, and Kristaps Porzingis won the skills challenge that year. So I don't know. Maybe we're just assembling the sideshow 2017 All-Star superstars. Why not?
Brad Stevens is like, I was quite taken by the 2017 All-Star Saturday night. It's always been my dream to bring them all back together as one.
He wouldn't have been coaching then. We got the 1 seed that year, didn't we? But we wouldn't have been 1 seed at All-Star break, I don't think.
I don't think so.
I think Cavs would have still been 1 seed. Anyway, sidebar.
Cool. All right. Well, we've hit on a lot. Anything you guys, any takes that you haven't had a chance to fire off, anything like that before we wrap up?
Nah, man, I'm fresh out.
I was going to say no is a valid answer.
Just, by the way, if we sign Glenn, Glenn's got to pay his subs too.
Yeah, that's right. Fees due within the first week of training camp. All right. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the First to the Floor YouTube channel and podcast. We've got a lot of spicy content coming up during the off season. We're going to stream some legacy games in our playback room. We've got live trivia shows and more coming up. Jackson, Joe, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.